So I've been a little MIA, and I wanted to give you guys an update as to where I've been, what I've been up to, and have a little Q&A session. So I had a Q&A session planned with Joe on Instagram. Didn't work out because we've been having issues with Instagram, so not doing it there. This won't be with Joe, but I will be answering some of those questions here. But I will say Joe is doing his Patreon now, and that's, I hear, is going really well, along with his YouTube channel where he's posting or uploading a lot of old content from Instagram. So go check that out. I'll leave a link up here to go follow him. Now, really quick, if you've noticed, I haven't been posting as often as I wanted to. I haven't been posting a lot of videos here. I haven't been posting a lot of stuff on Instagram. And the reason is I went on a road trip. So I have talked about my mental health in the past and my struggles with it. And I know that this is going to be an ongoing thing. But for the past 6 months, it's been on a slow decline. And then the past month, 2 months, it's probably been the worst it's ever been. And it was, had to do something about it. So I took a week away. I've been talking about for the past 2-3 years about doing a road trip that I've wanted to do where I don't really have anything planned. I just kind of go, and I did that. And so that was awesome. And I had to do some work along the way. So it just turned into this thing where I was like, hey, this is a good time for me to get away, good time for me to take a mental break, to reset, to kind of process whatever's going on and deal with all that, And so I did. And it's not a one-time fix. It's not going to fix everything and everything. It's not all perfect and dandy now, but it did help reset the trajectory. So things are on the up and up. Things are getting better. And thanks to my buddy, Paul Akobe, I will leave a link for him here. He's done a lot for men's mental health, and he recommended a treatment that I'm looking into and working on some other things to continue the process. So, but things are going better. So I'm back, and I got a ton of content to put out because I'm very much backlogged on it. But that's where I've been. That's what I've been up to. You will see one video from that trip just because there was something cool that happened along the way, which is TrueShot Ammo is now a supporter of this channel. So if you need to get some ammo, which I will say, let me just digress really quick. With everything going on in the world, things we know are going to become hard to come by. So I would say if you take nothing from this video, go stock up on mags. There's a bunch of links down in the description. Check out any of those stores. There's a coupon code, stock up on mags. The other thing I would say is stock up on ammo. TrueShot is now, there's a link down there. There's a coupon code as well. Go stock up on ammo. I'm not going to say, hey, you need to buy this ammo. Just based on the information that I received from them and from other people, now would be the time to do that. But that's all I'm going to say on that. We'll talk more about them in a future video, but super excited to have them on board. So back to the whole point of mental health. One thing I just want to say is that take inventory of your own mental health. Just check in, see how you're doing with yourself, check in on your buddies, see how they're doing. The work will always be there. Everything else will always be there. Do whatever you have to do to stay in the fight, right? So I think about a lot of friends of mine or guys who've been in gunfights don't care about how they look or how they appear if they have to do something crazy or something out of the ordinary to stay in a gunfight in order to win. And that's the way I view mental health. So whatever you have to do to stay in that fight, do it. If it means taking a week off from work, if it means you fall behind on bills, if it means time away from family, or if it means you need to switch jobs, switch environment, whatever it is, do what you have to do to stay in the fight. So, I worked for a few different bosses where I remember telling them hey, the work will still be here. You could see their mental health starting to slowly degrade. And I would always tell them just take a break, dude. Just take, even if it's a day and go, just take a breather, then get back in the fight. And, they didn't do it, and it just continued to get worse and worse and worse. So I had to take my own advice, and took a nice little breather, and I feel good, back in the fight. So with all that out of the way, let's get into the Q&A. I've got some questions that you guys sent a while back on Instagram, and I'm going to pick a few of those. Some of those are gear related, so we'll do the gear related stuff first. And then there's a few that are training related, and we'll do those. My plan is to do these Q&As once a month or every couple weeks, depending on how many questions you guys have. So what I'll probably start doing is on videos like this, if you have a question, something that you want answered, leave it in the comments down below, and I'll stock those away for the next Q&A. We'll just keep doing these periodically. And if you guys keep having questions, we'll just keep doing them. First up, how do you select bullets, and what role does grain, velocity, standard deviation, and extreme spread play? So I'll be talking about this in a future video, again, with the TrueShot stuff. There's a whole thing that's going to come with that, and that's a much longer topic to dive into. So I'll talk about that, but I will say for me, out of grain, velocity, standard deviation, extreme spread, for me, the most important one is going to be your extreme spread. Because if you have a really fast bullet, but you have a really high extreme spread, like 50 to 100 feet per second, through a shot string, that bullet's doing all kinds of things. And so trying to make corrections is really difficult, especially if you're shooting smaller targets. Same thing with grain. It's going to help with your BC. It's going to help with what it does in impact. But again, if you have a super high extreme spread, whether or not that bullet's making it to target, it's going to be really tough. So again, standard deviation is also really important, but that's only one part of the picture. I think extreme spread shows a bigger part of the picture. So you can have a really good or really small standard deviation, but have a really high extreme spread, and you're still going to struggle with that bullet. So I would say pay attention to that. Get a chrono. The new Garmin ones are out. Those are very popular. If you've already got a MagnetoSpeed, I don't really see a need to sell it. If you got a LabRadar, sell that, get the Garmin. And the reason I say that is because with the Garmin, yes, it's smaller, it's more portable. It is nice, but the ammo that you're typically shooting out of ARs, for most guys who are shooting ARs, you have an extreme spread of probably still around 40 or in the 30s. So you're not really gaining anything. You're just selling something at a loss to spend more money on something else when they do the same thing, and the readings are close enough as far as like their margin for error that you're not really gaining that much out of it except for portability. If it's that important to have portability, yeah, go for it, get the Garmin. But if you've got a MagnetoSpeed, you're probably fine with it for now. Yeah, but if you're hand loading and whatever, I mean, it's your choice, your money, but that would be my recommendation. Next question. So how does shooting suppressed affect shooting, and what actual maintenance is needed? There's a lot that's dependent on the suppressor in that, but for the most part, you're gonna experience a felt reduced recoil impulse. Most suppressors reduce the feeling of recoil, which makes them what we say shoot softer. It's a better felt recoil impulse. We tend to see better when we're shooting, when you're looking through a scope. We tend to see better with suppressed guns, unless you have one of those big breaks. Now, the downside of shooting one of the big comp breaks is that, especially if some of the blast comes back at you, guys will develop a flinch, especially if it's a larger caliber. And Taylor and I have been talking about this with the breaks we're putting on our bolt guns, that we're so used to shooting these really soft shooting suppressed guns that when you start shooting these guns with a big blast, you can develop a flinch from it. Just you're anticipating, knowing that blast is going to come, and you kind of start to flinch, which can cause shots to go off target. So shooting suppressed is nice. It is better. It reduces concussive blast. It's better when you're indoors. If you have a flow-through can, a really good flow-through can, it can reduce the amount of back pressure and gas that's coming back at you. And really quick, super side note here, if I can just go down a rabbit hole for a second. Everyone's making flow-through cans. Everybody is chasing Huxworks right now. And the reason that everyone is chasing Huxworks is because they're winning contracts. But the big difference I think a lot of people are missing out on is the reason that Huxworks is winning contracts is not because they're making suppressors, it's because they're making safety equipment. The cans they make aren't primarily to be quiet, and they're not primarily to reduce flash. They're primarily to reduce lead levels. So they have so much flow through that they can show on paper that it's reducing the lead level intake by those who are shooting it. And that's a big thing in government agencies right now, whether it's local PDs or even at the military level, because they're finding more and more the lead levels are starting to cause long-term health problems, which is costing more money in the VA long-term. So if they can reduce the lead levels, then it's going to allow them to make healthier soldiers and not have to pay all these things in the back end. And it's better for everybody. Where everyone who's chasing Huxworks is trying to make flow-through cans that are still quiet and still reduce flash, but they're not meeting the safety spec that all these agencies want. And so that's why they're still chasing them. In my opinion, that's why they're still behind them. So you're seeing a lot more flow-through cans coming, and they just don't have the same amount of back pressure reduction, i.e. lead level reduction, that Huxworks can show. And until they start doing that primarily, I don't think they're going to beat them out on contracts. That's just my opinion. I'm not the one who makes those decisions, but do that information what you will. So in regards to maintenance, now this is where flow-throughs made a big difference. Before, like with the RC2 can, even the Mini, a lot of the quieter cans, they're keeping all that gas and pressure in, which is reducing that sound, but you're getting more gas and pressure back. So it's causing more wear and tear on your moving parts, and it's speeding up the degradation on those because you're getting more carbon buildup. And with really tight tolerances, the more carbon you start putting in there, the more it's starting to wear away at parts. So like BCGs go out really fast, gas rings go out really fast. Buffer springs you're having to change more frequently. You are having to clean muzzle devices and clean cans. Flow-through cans are reducing that. It's extending the life of those moving parts, so you don't have to change them as much. You don't have to replace those parts as frequently or maintenance them as often. They're not getting as dirty. And a lot of that gas, the carbon buildup is going out the front. So it's a lot better. You still have to do some maintenance as far as cleaning it. Like the Huxworks that I have should be cleaned more frequent than I'm currently doing. And it's a pretty simple process, but it's still something that you should be doing because you're getting carbon built up in there. And you'll notice if you pick up a can that's been used for like 20,000 rounds versus a can that's brand new, you'll feel a weight difference of that carbon sitting inside. So it is some preventative maintenance. There's things you should be doing, but it's nothing crazy, right? So like if you've got a can, cool. Just keep an eye on it, right? Main thing you're looking for is carbon buildup, and change those gas rings and change buffer springs. So main things. Breakdown of gear. On what gear. I cannot type. I can't read. I think I had a stroke. Breakdown of what gear you should have when some things. Okay, basically they want to know what gear you need for a scope carving class. So I would say I think a lot of guys overthink this and they take too many things to a class, and I'm guilty of this just because I have a lot of stuff to test, so I take stuff with me to test it. But basically, you really just need your gun, a sling, a bipod, and a good rear bag. Now you can get by without the rear bag depending on the class, and you can get by without the bipod depending on the class. But I would say gun, sling, bipod, rear bag, and then your phone, and then whatever ammo you have plenty of, right? So if with those items, you're good, right? So the gun that you're gonna shoot, you train with the most, whatever optic it has on it, whatever you can afford or whatever you're wanting to use. The sling, because you can get a lot of positional work done with the sling. Rear bag, because it helps in prone, it helps positional work. And then bipod, because bipod's gonna stabilize you from prone and a few other modified prone positions. So that'll get you through a lot of it. Now, when it comes to cell phone, bring your cell phone because you can download the app, get some of your ballistic data. Most good instructors will show you how to do it on the app. Kestrels are obviously better, and that's my primary choice because you can store all your information in there. It's really super simple to use. It updates with weather, wherever you're at. It updates your data for you based on your local weather. So it's just way easier. Go check out any of the Kestrel videos I did. I'll link one up here. The master class, you can see everything that it does. But that's my preference. There's not necessarily something you need. It's a nice to have that you can get down the road, but you can get it all done with the app for the class. And then down the road as you start to progress, upgrade to a Kestrel or whatever you want. When it comes to ammo, this is the big one that I see a lot of guys make mistakes on. Pick one lot of ammo and you shoot that ammo for the entire class. I've seen guys switch to like 3 different types of ammo in a class, and you're constantly having to update your information because your velocity is going to be off, your BC is off, your holds are going to be off, you got to reshift 0. So like there's a ton of work that has to be done every time you change ammo. So you're better off just having one ammo, even if it's a lower quality ammo, like even if it's just 55 grain, that's all you can afford, it's all you could get enough of. Cool, shoot that for the whole class, learn the skill of putting all that information in, learn the skill of collecting that data, and then transfer it over to whatever ammo that you want to shoot. Like if you want to shoot 77 grains or 75s or 69s or whatever it is, then do that, because maybe you don't have as much of that. Maybe you don't have a big enough ammo budget to do all those things. So learn it with the 55 because you're in the class to learn the skill, then apply the skill later on down the road. But for the most part, whatever ammo you can get enough of for that class, use that throughout the entirety of the class. If you can afford 77s, do it. Go for it. I mean, that's what I shoot. But I prioritize that over shooting a bunch of other stuff. So, all right, next question. So, do you recommend a suppressor cover? I've been seeing a lot of Mirage. Yes, 100%. I have a suppressor cover on my competition gun because we travel to a lot of different places and we get a ton of Mirage, especially in Florida, especially here in Texas. As that can starts to heat up, you get a lot of Mirage, and it takes a while for that can to cool down enough for that Mirage to go away. And it does affect, especially when you're shooting at like 800 yards and you've got like a reduced C-zone or even like an MOA target at 800 yards, and you got Mirage, it's moving. I mean, I've seen it where it's moved the target. The Mirage alone has moved the target like a mil back and forth, side to side. And I'm like, dude. So that was one of the things like, when I started having a lot of issues with Mirage off the can, then I immediately switched. And I was like, I got to buy a suppressor cover. I had Taylor buy me when I put it on in the airport. But yeah, I would recommend a suppressor cover 100%. And it will also depend on the can you have too, because like the cans that are flow through, I found don't heat up quite as fast because a lot of that heat is escaping. But if you have a can that it keeps a lot of that in, it's going to heat up even faster. So do it that way you will. How many ready to? I did not know how to type when I typed these questions. I just took them from Instagram and I was like typing them out, and it doesn't make any sense. Anyways, I think what they mean is how many rifles do you have? I can't even talk. I think what they mean is how many ready rifles do you need and how do you set them up? I honestly, you can do one, right? Like I literally have one rifle that if I had to go, it would be the one rifle I take, and it's the one I use in competition. It's my GP rifle. It's an LPVO, but that's me. Like I would carry a bipod. I would carry the LPVO with the top dot. I would run it like that with the Arca rail, and like that's me. That's not necessarily you. It's dependent on you, your skill, what you're comfortable with, what you've trained with. The other option I would have is a 12.5 with a red dot or red dot magnifier, and those are the two guns that would be my go-to guns. I would take my LPVO and I would take the red dot or the red dot 12.5, and that's it. I don't really overthink them too much. It's more so training with that gun and knowing what it's capable of, knowing what you can do with it, having hard data on how far you can shoot that gun, what your holds are with that gun, any maintenance you need to do on it. That's more important. I lean more towards the side of simplicity and having fewer guns rather than having a bunch of guns. I know a lot of guys have a bunch of guns and some of them shoot all of them, like Joe shoots all his guns. Some of them don't shoot all their guns, and that's your choice. But as you start to shoot more and more guns, your proficiency with each one slowly declines, and because you're spreading the workload over all these different guns versus being really, really good with one gun. And that's another thing. Like, again, another tangent I'm going to chase down really quick, but I get a lot of people complain that I shoot the same guns over and over, or like that I only shoot Noveske, or I only shoot whatever brand, or Cobalt, or whoever it is, like whatever they want to be mad about. But the reason that I shoot the same optic and the same gun all the time is because that's the only way you become proficient with it and when you're trying to get better, you have to shoot the same gun over and over. And so people are like, well, you're just shilling. I'm not shilling for them. It's just, that's the gun that works for me. And that's the thing that works. And so I just shot out my Noveske barrel and I'm going to replace it with something else just so I can test a different barrel. And I'll just continue, as long as that barrel performs, I will continue to use whatever barrel that is, and until I shoot that one out. And Noveske's going to warranty that barrel, so it'll go in a different gun. I'm still going to, they still make really good barrels. I'm not saying that they don't, but just to kind of get people to like take a deep breath, right? Like, I'm just shooting the same thing because I'm trying to get better at shooting the one thing. So yeah, do with that what you will, but I mean, I don't really think you need a bunch is what I'm getting at. You don't need a bunch of rifles sitting around because you're not going to carry all those. You're not going to hike around with like 5 different rifles, right? Not even 3, even 2 is cumbersome, right? Like, I get guys complain about, oh, you have so much stuff on your rifle, it's going to be so heavy. Okay, maybe, yeah. For some people, yeah, it's heavy and they don't want to go through that, and that's cool. But it's even heavier to carry 2 rifles than it is to carry 1 heavy rifle. So make up your mind, decide what's most important to you, set up your one gun the way you need it, and rock with that thing, and know what it's capable of, where its failure points are, and any maintenance you need to do on it, and be able to do field maintenance on it. All right, let's move over to some training questions. So we had a very scientific question from Veracity Solutions. Wants to know about lunar drift and its effect on a bullet fired from north of Alabama. That is above my pay grade and security clearance, so I'm going to transfer that over to Joe. I will ask Joe that question and have him answer it. Maybe Scott himself can answer that. But if you're not already, go follow Veracity Solutions on Instagram. Go check out his podcast he did with JBS Training Group. Wealth of knowledge, great shooter. He's going to be doing some classes next year, I believe. He's currently, I think, open to doing some coaching, so check him out. I always bug him about the dumbest stuff, but he's super nice, very helpful. Check him out. If you get to shoot a match with him, hop in his squad and just watch and learn. All right, any life lessons from shooting? I would say, the biggest life lesson for me right now, where I'm at in my shooting, is focus on the shot at hand. And I think because in matches, it's really easy to kind of get ahead of yourself, and you're thinking, 8 shots down the road in a stage, or maybe you've made a bad shot and you're thinking, you're doing the math in your head, okay, well, I need to shoot faster so I can make up, the time that I lost on that shot, or, you're beating yourself up because you made a mistake, and then it starts to spiral and you do worse and worse in the match. And when in reality, all you can do is focus on the shot at hand, like give 100% attention to the shot you have at hand. You've done all the prep work you could for the match. You've done all you could to read wind before the stage started. You can't control what's going to happen in the next stage, or even at the end of this stage, what the next prop is going to hold. You can't do anything about that other than the shot at hand. And so I think for a lot of people, just in life in general, we worry so much about what's coming up down the road. And we, beat ourselves up about the stuff that's happened in the past, maybe wrong decisions we've made, mistakes we've made, wishing we could have done things different, that we lose sight of the only thing that we can control, which is the shot at hand. So my one life lesson, I think right now, if I had to give one, would be just focus on the shot at hand. And that could apply to whatever's going on in your life with, marriage, relationships, friendships, work, money, anything really. So focus on the shot at hand. So that's a good question. I like that question. Tips for a 22-year-old who works and wants to get better at shooting. Dry fire, dude. Dry fire. Especially, it depends on the type of shooting you're talking about. Like if you're talking in general across the board, that's a more complicated problem because you have a lot of skills you're trying to learn. Like trying, like I was talking about earlier, like trying to be proficient at a lot of skills takes a lot of work. Really, you've got to get good at one skill, maintain that skill, and then start to learn another one. And that's kind of how you get better. That's just the way we learn things. But I would say dry fire is going to be your best friend. So being a young guy, probably not having a lot of excess money sitting around to spend on ammo or traveling to the range. I don't know if you've got to go to the range or how far it is or anything like that. But dry fire, you can learn a ton, dude. I dry fire every day for scope carbine. You can do, I found that it's easier to dry fire with scope carbine and with bolt guns than it is with pistol. So pistol is a much harder skill to learn because of recoil. With rifles, it's a little bit recoil isn't such a big deal, and you can get a lot of the work done in dry fire. And I would say most people probably spend too much time dry firing like mag reloads and draws, like everybody's trying to get a sub-second draw, which not saying it's not important. I'm not saying that at all. It is 100% important. But I think just percentage-wise of how much their time is spent trying to achieve a sub-second draw is disproportionate to what it should be. You should be spending more time on grip, on seeing your sights, on presentation is probably more important, and transitions with pistols. So like from target to target, like are you landing on target or is it going past and you're coming back? Are you going on target and you're like over confirming? Are you like wobbling around looking for it? When you transition, are you losing the dot? Like that, I think is all way more important than just the mechanics of coming out of the holster. Coming out of the holster, being sub-second is 100% important, but you're not winning or losing a match based on a sub-second draw. You are winning and losing matches based on what you're doing in transitions and your movement in and out of positions. So spend the correct proportionate amount of time working on those things in your dry fire, right? So that would be my recommendation. Same thing. So like with rifle, you can do a lot of things. Like Joe's ladder drill is a great drill to dry fire, and you don't even have to do it at speed. Just working those positions and finding little things you can refine in dry fire, and then you go out, you check it on range, you find out what worked, what didn't. You come back to your dry fire, and then you do it again. You just keep going through that process of refining these little things. And track it with data, right? So give yourself some kind of benchmark that you're going after, whether it's that sub-second draw, don't just say sub-second, put a time on it. Is it, sub-second 0.99 or is it 0.78? Like what does that really realistically look like for you? How big is that target? What do you want to move your transitions to? When you're doing scope carbine stuff, if that's your jam, how small do you want your wobble zone to be? Like what are you okay with? Are you trying to get down to 0.1 mils of a wobble zone? Or are you cool with a 1 mil wobble zone? Like it's entirely dependent on you. But when you start to put numbers on it, you start to put data, it'll help you track that and improve, because you can see, yeah, it took me 3 weeks to go from a 1 mil wobble zone down to a 0.8 wobble zone. And then, maybe it took another like month or 2 months to get down to 0.5, and you just keep doing that. And then you can start putting time on it, right? So on the ladder drill, getting into like, maybe you start putting times on getting into that second rung on the ladder. And it's like, yeah, I started off and from the beep, the first time I did it, it took me 12 seconds to get steady enough to break a shot. And then, you start dry firing that, and then you get down to, let's say 10 seconds, and then 8 seconds. And then you just keep progressing and making it faster and faster for yourself. And then you start reducing the targets, different things, but whatever it is, just track it. But you can test all of it. You can do the rehearsal, all of it in dry fire, and then go out and test it on the range. So that's going to be your best friend. Also, I would say don't fall into the trap of feeling like you need to buy everything right now. Train with what you've got, learn the skill, and then move on to the next thing. So like a lot of people complain about, or they don't necessarily complain, but they ask, why do you shoot an LPVO? Why 1-8? Why not a 4-16? Or why not this? Or why not that? And it's like, bro, I'm just trying to get good with this. And when I feel like I'm good enough with this, then I'll move up to the next thing, right? Whether it's a 4-16 or like a bolt gun now. Like I'm shooting a bolt gun now. But it took me a while to get to the point where I wanted to shoot the bolt gun, because I wanted to learn the skills first. So don't feel like you have to do it all at once. It's going to take time. Just fall in love with the process of getting better, and everything else will come with time. Last question. Scoped carbine dry fire. So I kind of touched on this in the last question, but I will say like the biggest difference for scoped carbine dry fire is that it's a lot more positional work, right? And there's a ton of things, like as I mentioned before in the previous question, there's a ton of things you can refine in dry fire with scoped carbine. And the biggest thing that I think that you're looking for is reducing your wobble zone. So how small of a wobble zone do you want, right? So your reticle is a ruler, and when we're looking at a target, if you've got a 1 mil target, or even a 0.1 or 0.2 mil target, how much is your dot wobbling outside of that? So the goal is to reduce the amount of wobble to where it stays inside of that target, and what we would call a good enough wobble zone. Now, as you reduce the size of targets, that wobble zone's got to be smaller. So as you work different positions, you can work on reducing that wobble zone from different positions. And so like, standing, you may be solid. You can just hold it like you'd be prone. You're 0.1 mil or less wobbling around in there. But then all of a sudden you get to kneeling and it's like that thing's going side to side, or you're getting the figure 8 going up, or, it's going across. So isolating different things that you're trying to work on and working on those things and picking out whatever it is. Pick one thing that you're going to work on for the week and start, tracking it, getting better at that one thing. And I think the other thing too that I see with a lot of guys that I don't think that is emphasized enough, and I see this especially like at matches or in classes, is moving with aggression. And the way that I try to describe it is, if you ever watch an NFL game and you watch NFL linemen, when the ball is snapped, look at how aggressive they move from position to position. Just the linemen. And it's a very small, short movement, but they move with so much aggression. It's not chaotic. They're not trying to be super fast. They're just trying to be aggressive getting into that position. And I think that's how you got to think about scoped carbine too. And even with, bolt guns, being more aggressive, getting in and out of positions, because a lot of guys are losing a lot of cheap time there in just being very lazy or casual in their movement. So going from, say you're at the top of the ladder and you're coming out and then going to the next one, it's kind of like, okay, I'm going to take the bag. We're going to pat the bag, make sure it's good. And then we're going to get in there. And it's like super like methodical and slow, which is cool if you're trying to get it right, but at some point you got to speed it up. You got to be more aggressive, right? Because at the end of the day, big picture, this is a skill that we're learning to defend ourselves, to protect ourselves in some way, shape, or form. And in a gunfight, you don't want to move like you're casual. You want to aggressively move from position to position as if there were shots coming at you, because you're only going to perform to the level that you've trained. Like, you don't magically achieve this better level under stress or under competition. That's just not how it works. So Scott Peterson, like I talked about earlier, Veracity Solutions, one of the things he talks about is like he wants to be able to shoot a match at like 85% or 80% of his best and still win. So he's not even shooting at 100% and beating other people. So that's the way you've got to train. You're 100% in training. Like, you've got to really push that. So that way, when the test comes, whatever that test is, your 80% still is good enough or better than everybody else. So, yeah, I think isolate something, whatever part of your scoped carbine journey you feel like needs work, isolate that, get better at it. And then I think the other thing too is a lot of guys can really emphasize being more aggressive in and out of positions. And I know, I think one of the reasons for that people aren't as aggressive in and out of positions is because they don't have a range they can live fire positional work. You don't have to live fire to improve your positional work, right? So like, positional work is positional work. Like, once you're in that position, it's all the same. It doesn't matter how fast you got in there or how slow you got in there once you're in that position. So you can start there and practice that in live fire. Okay, is my recoil management good? Is my trigger press good? Is my wobble zone good? Cool. Because you've done the work at home, doing all the dry fire of getting in and out of those positions, that your positional work getting there is going to be fine. So, if you're one of those people who doesn't have a range you can do that at, do all your movement at home. If you have a ladder, dry fire off the back of a couch. If you've got a hallway, dry fire down the hallway. Whatever you can do at home, dry fire all that at home. And if your range only lets you shoot static and like, hey, yeah, you can put it on a ladder, but you can't move in and out of those positions, cool. You know what it takes to get aggressive in and out of that because you did it at home. So then at the range, just focus on, that trigger press, focus on your recoil management. Where's the reticle going when I'm firing? Is it coming back on target? Is it going way off? Am I getting a lot of reticle movement? That's where you kind of start to refine those things. Obviously having a range that lets you do both is ideal, but not everybody has that opportunity. So again, work on what you can in dry fire. You can do so much, so much. Maybe I'll do a whole video on dry fire, which kind of takes me to my next point. I had asked, and this isn't a question, this is just kind of like the ending for me, but I asked a while back, I think on Instagram and then here on YouTube, if you guys would be interested in doing a Patreon, because it kind of seems the way that everybody's going. And I've had people tell me like, you should start a Patreon, but I really don't want to. I want to keep as much of my content available on YouTube as possible. Patreon's just not for me. Not to say I'm knocking guys who do that. A bunch of my friends do it and it works out great for them. I just don't personally want to do that. And there's a ton of information I want to put out, and it would make sense to do it on Patreon. But again, I just don't want to. So I think what I'm going to do is keep it for as long as I can. I'm going to keep as much of the content and information as possible here on YouTube. And if I have to move it to Patreon, I will. But I think my solution is to put the content here. And if YouTube doesn't like it, I will take off all the monetization of it. And I'll just do a tip jar in those videos. And I'll tell you guys up front, I'll be like, hey, look, YouTube didn't monetize this video. Found it helpful. Leave a tip in the tip jar. And just be like a Venmo or, you know, a link of something you can buy on my website, and it could be like $1 or whatever. And that'll just help me cover the cost of making these videos. But I want to put out more information. Is going to help more people. That's ultimately why I started this channel. So yeah, hope you guys think that's a good idea. If you don't, tell me. And if you think Patreon's the way to go, then I'll just do that. But I really don't want to. I want to keep it all here because I feel like it'll help more people that way. So I think I've rambled enough. I don't know how long this video is, but we're going to cut it there. Thank you guys for following along. Make sure to like, subscribe, karate chop the bell so you get notified every time I upload a video, and I will see you guys in the next one. Also, if you have questions for the next Q&A, leave them in the comments down below. How now, brown cow? How now, brown cow? Go Rangers. Freaking knock the Astros out. It's for you, Levi, if you're watching this. I don't know if you watch anymore, but if you're watching this, it's for you. No, let's start that over. Didn't like that. It's always a weird topic to talk about. Let's try this again. And I know Scott's gonna comment in here and be like, it's whatever the correct answer is.